Are you worried about your aging parents? Are you worried about their health and their ability to make tough decisions? Well, it's not an easy conversation to have, but come join us to consider this program as we talk through where to start and what you can do about it. Welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Grant Soliven.
And I'm Jamie Burton.
Jamie, so glad to have you today. And honestly, in a wonderful conversation, we're talking about the mother of all. That's the theme of the shows we're going through right now. And when it comes to mother of all and caring for family, the question we have are you worried about your parents' health? Mm-hmm. And how you start having the tough conversations. Excuse me, that's a tongue twister. And what can you do about it? So first and foremost, Jamie, our team has put out a lot of content on this subject. Our managing partner, Joseph Clark, is spending essentially the back half of his career solving a very important problem that we're going to get to here in a minute. But here's the thing, folks. It's always tough to look at your parents and say, hey, mom, dad, we're noticing you're fading away here. We're not making good decisions. You're one sandwich short of a picnic, right? And how do you help it? How do you engage in those conversations, number one? How do you help your family, number two? And how do you prevent yourself from engaging in nuclear conversations? Meaning, I've seen family, and Joe said this on the radio as well, we've seen families, Jamie, take the car keys away from their parents. Mm-hmm. I have never seen, and I don't think Joe's ever seen, I don't think you've ever seen, a family take away the checkbook.
Right.
And so going to get nitty-gritty here for a little bit, but before we do so, again, our team has tried to create resources for all of our families and viewers to use. So, Jamie, talk through the checklist that you have printed off for us and where it can be accessed.
Absolutely. So, at Financial Enhancement Group, we've put together a checklist to kind of help walk you through what are those tough conversations that you need to have with your parents. What we know is that, your parents, they're the ones who raised you. They're the ones who have taught you everything you know. They've embedded all of your morals for you. And so when you get to this age and when you get to where you have these conversations, it can be very awkward and a very hard thing to bring up. And that's just the emotional side of it. You really have to think about what are these important conversations that we need to have. So we've created a checklist to kind of go through the exact conversations that you need to have. The first one is talking to your parents about estate planning. Do they have those plans in place? Do they have those documents in place? Do they have their wishes very clearly spelled out so you know what their wishes are for their assets when something happens to them in the future? What we see a lot of times is that people don't have their estate documents in order, and it can cause a lot of friction with families and the loved ones that are left behind still living that have to deal with this. So this is a way they have their state documents together. It's clearly spelled out what their wishes are. It can avoid a lot of that turmoil, and that's important.
Oh, it is. And Jamie, it's the door opener, right? Mm-hmm. It's that question is simple. It's not intrusive, and it's, hey, mom, dad, I'm just doing some financial planning on my own and wanted to make sure that you guys have your state documents in place. Yep. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, but then it allows you to continue to step further in that conversation and continue down the checklist. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. The next thing on the checklist is talking to your parents about possibly using a financial advisor. So a lot of the times what we talk about on the show is that things that are typically done with an old mindset. It's done in a way that made sense 20 years ago, but probably doesn't make sense today. So being able to talk to your parents about using a financial advisor, or at least having a financial advisor sit down with them and look over what they have going on to see if what they have in place still makes sense, or if they really should make some changes that's going to help them today and also help their loved ones in the future.
In case in point, folks, I had a situation, we were giving a discussion to a group of people and talking about the importance of tax planning and how rules have changed. Mm-hmm. And please don't take my next comment here as a combat against CPAs. It's not at all. CPAs are some of our most trusted allies in this planning that we do, and we love all of the ones we work with. But, there was a retired CPA in the room, and I was telling this group of people that because of the tax law changes, they now only had one final year to do a married filing joint tax return if your spouse died. So if your spouse passed away this year, 2022, then this is the last year you could claim a married filing joint tax return. And in that discussion, this old CPA piped up very aggressively and said, "You're wrong. Why are you making these people afraid?" And I calmly looked at the gentleman and I said, "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" He said, "They have 3 years." And I said, "No, sir, the tax code changed in 2009. and it's now 1 year. And he was so adamant about being correct. I actually had, unfortunately, during the conversation, one of our colleagues, one of our advisors, looked it up, and he said, "No, sir, here it is, tax law change." And the gentleman still just wouldn't let it go. So we had to push through the conversation. But I mean, those embedded mindsets, right? Although sometimes they've been left behind by time, you've got to be willing and flexible to undo some of that. So I just want to add that story.
Yeah,
Jamie.
absolutely. Absolutely. The next thing on the checklist is talking to your parents about where their estate documents are located. So not only having the conversation about making sure they're up to date and they have listed in the estate documents everything they want listed, but making sure that somebody knows exactly where to find them. That can be a huge thing. Whether it be life insurance policies, where do we find those? Do they have them? Where can we find them? Who's the beneficiaries? Their wills, if they have a trust, where their trust is located. So being able to easily access those documents is very important and can eliminate a ton of headaches.
And here's another thing, folks, a shameless plug. If you're working with a team like ours that is going to do this holistic planning, focus on critical elements, we call them the 5 critical elements, estate planning is one of them. We're going to ask for copies of all of this so that your family can have a touch point to go to and help kind of go through this process. Because, again, and attorneys are willing to do the same. CPAs do the best they can as well. So I'm not saying the other professionals can't help. But if a good plan's in place and a good advisory team's leading you through that, they're going to have copies of it and be able to walk your beneficiaries, your heirs, through what's happening and how to appropriately engage in that situation.
Yep, absolutely. It's a headache that can be easily eliminated if you do it the right way, for sure. The next hard conversation on the checklist is talking to your parents about their income needs. Number one, making sure that their income needs are being met today, that they are able to pay their bills and live the life they want to live. But number two, it's important to have that conversation, especially if in the future you see that they are possibly going to need to go into a nursing home or a long-term care facility. If that is a possibility on the horizon, how are they going to pay for it? What are the plans for that? Are there any plans in place, or does planning need to take place to prepare for a future event?
Absolutely. And here's the other thing too, folks. An early call sign to someone slipping and them not being themselves is how they spend their money. So a lot of families that are helping monitor their parents' finances, you'll see the discrepancies begin inside of their income and their paychecks, how they're using their resources. So another great reason why to sometimes pay attention to what they're spending money on so they're not getting taken advantage of.
Absolutely. The final thing on the retirement checklist, or not the retirement checklist, sorry, the hard conversations to have with your parents. The final one is what type of accounts that they have. This is a hard conversation to have because a lot of people in a generation that would be your parents, they are not comfortable talking about their assets or what they have saved. It's not a conversation that is had very regularly. So being able to have that conversation about, one, how much money they have, and two, what kind of accounts they are in, it's important because it's going to affect their income going forward, their taxes going forward. And then it's also going to affect their loved ones when they do pass away and the money is left to their beneficiaries. It's really important to know how those assets are saved and how they are going to be distributed upon death to the beneficiaries. So being able to have that conversation, it opens up the doorway to a lot of other conversations to make sure that all of the right planning is being done.
And Jamie, wonderful point. And the reason why you want to understand that, particularly if you're going to be the executor of the estate and or a successor trustee, or if you're a female executrix. By the way, we found that term in there. Yeah,
nice.
Our internal trust division attorney Tom Hurley introduced me to that one. But if you're going to be a representative for your aging family in their estate documents, having this down is going to make your life so much easier because there's nothing harder. And we've watched family after family go through this. There's nothing harder than mourning the loss of a parent and now all of a sudden being handed a giant document and saying, now you're in charge. And you have no idea what the rules of the game are. And so we highly suggest you start having conversations with your parents and understanding where their wealth, et cetera, is so you're not caught off guard when handed the giant document or the estate plan, whatever that looks like. And also bring a professional in to help your family evaluate that if there's not one already in place. It is such an important discussion, and you don't want to leave that off the table. You don't want to be handed this giant problem that you could have helped essentially curtail and fix before the inevitable happened. So lastly, for families that are dealing with aging parents, if there's estate documents in place and that you haven't considered incremental incapacitation inside of the plan document, I suggest you do so. And that simply means, if we slip away, how we prevent the nuclear option from having to be triggered, meaning if we're not able to pay bills or do certain things like Jamie talked about, how much control do we lose over money to protect ourselves from ourselves and our family from ourselves. Mm-hmm. So definitely would love to engage in that conversation with you. If you have questions about that or you're looking for the checklist, please reach out to us, yourlifeafterwork.com. If you're looking to engage in next steps, maybe you're looking for an advisory team to help you and your family evaluate this, please reach out to us, 800-928-4001. Brittany will be on the other end of the phone or of that email helping you get attached to an advisory team member that can help you through the situation. We appreciate you spending time with us today. I look forward to seeing you again soon.